you get that drink.
Welcome back to the Queen's Yanks channel. Today, as the title says, we're going to be predicting the finish for the Sky Bet English Championship. And in my opinion, this might be the hardest league to predict out of any league in England and maybe even of the top leagues around the world. And the reason why I'm choosing to predict the championship is because that's where my team plays at, QPR. And so I'm going to try to keep this as simple as possible to try to cut down on any time this might be to make this easy to watch for everybody. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in ABC order instead of 24th to 1st. That way it kind of, I don't want to say it keeps you on the edge of your seat a little bit, but it also leads for, I think, more discussion and maybe hopefully can lead to some interaction around the comments in the video. So as I go along, tell me what you agree with, what you don't agree with. Where did I have your club? Do you agree where I had your club? Do you disagree where I had your club? Let me know. So at the end of the year, I'm going to do a follow-up and see how close I was. So nonetheless, we're going to start at Barnsley. And, you know, Barnsley finished 5th last year, but they lost DK, their manager, Salbar, who I think may have been their best player. I still think they're the youngest team. Don't quote me on this, but I think they're the youngest team in the championship. I don't think they were as good as the record showed last year. I think they just hit a hot spot at the right time, and pretty much it was one of those everything went right when it needed to type of things. I know they brought in Cole from Motherwell, but you know, I don't think they replaced what they lost. And bringing in a new manager is going to be interesting to see how it works out. But I think they go back to reality just a little bit, and I find them at 13th. So next up, we got Birmingham City. They finished 18th last year. They were only 3 teams gave up more goals last year, and they brought back basically that same defense. Only 1 team had less goals scored. They have a new manager. I'm not sure what to expect, honestly. This could go either way. I feel like you're going to fight for relegation, but I feel like you're going to be safe at the same time. Although I think this could potentially go down quite a bit. For now, I've got you in 17th. So we'll move on to the Blackburn Rovers. Finished 15th last year. They bring Armstrong back. Mowbray has managed for 4 years, and which at this point is a lifetime in English football. So honestly, I don't see any real improvement here, but just for the sake of making a little bit of improvement for consistency, I've got you finishing 14th this year. We'll move on to Blackpool, which is newly promoted from League One. They had to go through the playoffs to get there. I think they have a team good enough to stay up. You know, they have some players with they brought in some players with some championship experience and some veterans. I'm really, really rooting for you all to stay up. Of the 3 new teams, I think this club has the best shot at staying up. You've got a fan here. I'm rooting for you. So unless you're playing anybody for QPR, I really hope you guys have a strong showing and stay up, because I think you are an asset to the championship. So we'll go on to the next team, which is Bournemouth. You all made the playoffs last year, finished 6th. Had they not lost Begovic, I believe I may have even had you guys finishing 1st or 2nd. But that said, you got a great squad back. And I think depth-wise may be a little bit of an issue, but I still think you make the top 6. I've got you 4th for now. Of course, at the time of filming these, there may be some transfers or some players let go, but for now, I've got you finishing 4th. So we'll move right along to Bristol City. Bristol City finished 19th last year and gave up the 2nd most goals and had the 3rd worst goal differential. I believe your team's striker depth is awful. I don't hate Bentley, but I think he's going to need a miracle. And quite frankly, who's scoring? Is it going to be Martin, King? I don't know. So I do have you all finishing 23rd and getting relegated. I am so sorry, Bristol. Moving along to Cardiff City. Finished 8th last year. Former Ireland manager Mick McCarthy takes over this year with a decently talented squad. Kiefer Moore should always be a threat. Decent backline for what I'm looking at. I think you guys could sneak into the playoffs, but I do have you finishing just short in 7th place. But you got potential to move up. So next up is Coventry City. Finished 16th last year. Brought in Simon Moore from relegated Sheffield to play keeper. I'm assuming he's going to start. Wagon comes in from Derby. I still think this is a relatively weak squad. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh, but I've got you all finishing 18th at the table. So next up is Derby County, and look, if not for a point deduction from Sheffield Wednesday, you all would have been relegated. You guys barely held off Wycombe last year. Some say Wycombe maybe should have filed a complaint, but you know, as of the time of filming this video, and last I heard, there were 13 contracted players and 2 of them were hurt. Of course, you've got transfer sanctions. This team's a mess. Would not surprise me if we see Wayne Rooney out on the field again at some point. It's going to be a long year. This past weekend, I believe you tied, so you got a point from there. So, hey, fair play. You guys are staying strong and I don't feel like you guys are just going to lay over for anybody. Unfortunately, I have you guys finishing dead last at 24th, but you know, I don't think you guys are just going to lay over. So we'll move on to Fulham, and frankly, unless there's some transfers made, this is by far the most loaded squad, talented squad from top to bottom, in my opinion. As of now, you all should have no problem breezing through the championship and returning again to the EPL. You know, you've got 2 Americans in the back line with Tim Ream and Anthony Robinson. Mitrovic is going to be probably banging them out again this year in the championship. New manager, love or hate Scott Parker. Either way, he's gone. Obviously, I think you all are going for it yet again. I don't know who's the bigger yo-yo club, Fulham or Norwich City, but either way, I have you all finishing first and winning the league. So move on to Huddersfield, which is almost a different story, pretty vastly different story from Fulham. Finished 20th last year, gave up the most goals, and to my knowledge, you only brought in free transfer players. I think the squad is maybe worse than last year's, but we'll see. Either way, I've got you finishing 20th. So we'll move on to Hull City. Outright won League One last year. I know Honeyman had some EPL minutes early on in his career, but I don't feel like enough was done. I know you guys have scored 3 loaner players from Premier League teams. This is a former EPL team. You know, I remember when Hull City was in the Premier League, and at this point, you look like a fringe relegation team. I feel like this team might blow up this year. Unfortunately, I have you finishing 22nd. Sorry, guys. So we'll move on to Luton Town. Finished 12th last year. Elton John FC's made it, I think, is a solid mid-table team. A few years back, I can remember when Luton was in League Two. One of the first manager careers I had in FIFA, I got fired from my first job, and the only team that hired me was Luton, and I brought you guys up to the Premier League. So maybe that's what you all are doing. I believe you overachieved a little bit last year. I don't know if the firepower is quite there, but either way, you're a decent club, and I think you're going in the right direction, as I think your club is ran correctly. But nonetheless, I still have you finishing 12th this year, but I think good things are coming. Move on to Middlesbrough. Finished 10th last year. You brought back some new, brought in some new talent. Pyro, and if I'm saying these wrong, I'm sorry. Ikpeazu, and former QPR player Lumley. I think you got a. Oh yeah, and you also have a former QPR manager, Neil Warnock. I just realized that. I don't think you'll have the squad to compete for a playoff spot just yet. I'm expecting some growing pains early on, and because of that, I have you finishing 9th. But if Lumley is hitting, you all should be just fine. So we'll move on to Millwall, and finished 11th last year. I think Millwall is a very strong squad filled with veterans and long-tenured players, and I think that goes a long way, maybe even more than a lot of people are thinking. I think you all are strong all around. Players like Wallace, Cooper, Hutchinson. Honestly, I believe any of those players could probably be of service to some EPL teams, and I think they're going to surprise some people. And I believe you might be one player away from getting hot. Really, really hot and making the playoffs, and I think one player will do that this year. I've got you finishing 6th and making the playoffs. Moving along to Nottingham Forest, and finished 17th last year, and honestly one loss away from being 20th. And this is just 1 year after missing the playoffs on basically one of the biggest choke jobs, I guess you want to call it, ever, as you missed out on the playoffs by that last spot 2 years ago. They brought in Ethan Horvath, which is a little bit odd due to Samba. I don't know who's going to step up. I think Ethan Horvath has, and I'm trying not to be biased, but I think he's got a higher upside at this point. Look, I don't know. This team may not be as bad as last year showed. I think Alex Mighton may be a household. I think he's a star in the making. Right now, I have you all finishing 11th just because I don't know what to expect. I really don't. So we move to Peterborough and gained automatic promotion last year, coached by Darren Ferguson, which is offspring of arguably the best manager ever. He's currently on his 3rd stint with Peterborough, so who says you can't come back twice? This particular stint has been his most successful statistically by far. We'll see how far, we'll see if Clark Harris can produce at this level. Of the 3 promoted, Peterborough had the worst defense. I think it's going to be a fight. But I do think that you live to see another day, and I'm rooting for you. I've got you finishing 21st. So we'll go to Preston North End next. Finished 13th last year, decent mid-table team. I don't think anything's really changed. Brown doesn't have much help, so I think anywhere between 13th to 16th is fair. I've got you at 15th. So we'll move on to my club, Queen's Park Rangers. Finished just as strong as anybody last year. Ended up 9th, if not for a terrible start, which led to Sonny Deing taking over for Joe Lumley, as I mentioned earlier. I think things would have been a little bit different. Early on, you couldn't buy a goal for QPR. They've made 9 signings. I think they're a top 3 roster in my opinion. I think they're strong everywhere, just like Millwall. I think bringing in guys like Johansson and bringing back Charlie Austin and Landon Dykes are going to be really, really strong up front as they thrash Manchester United and stuck right with Leicester and managed to get a draw. I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk because there's some really strong teams up front, but I think you all are going to make the playoffs, and I'm really hoping that you do. Obviously, I prefer to win the league, but nonetheless, I have QPR finishing 3rd. And we'll move along to Reading. Finished 7th last year, nearly missed out on the playoffs by 7 points. Unfortunately, I feel like this may have been the last try with that team. They still have some remaining good players, especially the Brazilians, but this former EPL team, I think it needs to do a complete reset. I don't expect much this year. I've got Reading finished in 16th, unfortunately. So we'll move on to one of the relegated teams from last year, Sheffield United. Just like Fulham, I think Sheffield is completely loaded. As of now, they still have Ramsdale, Basham, Egan, Stevens, Fleck, so on, so on, so on. Just 2 years ago, a lot of people forget Sheffield was challenging for a Europa League spot. And they missed out, but they were right there toward the end. Brought in former Fulham manager Jankovic, who led Fulham to the Premier League a few years back when Alexander Mitrovic was having that hell of a breakout year. I really like this team, and I've got Sheffield getting one of the automatic spots and finishing 2nd. So we'll make our way to Stoke City. Get a little bit cold and rainy in here, huh? So finished all the way down at 14th last year. Gone to the cold, rainy nights in Stoke at the EPL level. But I really want to see you guys back in the English Premier League. You all are a big, proper club. And this year starts the ride back, in my opinion. I don't think you're there just yet, but next year, if the right moves are made, I believe you all will be challenging for a playoff spot. I think Joe Allen and his leadership will be enough to fight for the top table pretty easy. Man, I really miss seeing Peter Crouch out there. But nonetheless, I think Stoke's going to finish 8th. So we'll move on to Swansea. Finished 4th last year. Nearly made it back to the Premier League. Swansea brings back a decent team with Grimes and Lowe, but lost arguably your best player in IU. And you have a new manager. I think Swansea is going to take a step back. I think it's going to be, with everything new, it's going to take some time to get things going, even though you have some proper players there. But I don't think it works, and there may be some selling going on if Swansea's not in a great spot in December. But I have Swansea finishing 10th, even though I think you all have the best home kit probably ever made. So we'll move on to West Brom. West Brom, I've got you guys fighting for a playoff spot and finishing 5th. You all have kept a lot of the EPL players and brought in Snodgrass, which a lot of people have forgotten about. Managed to get Barnsley's manager last year, who I think overachieved, and I believe he was a reason why they overachieved a little bit. So presumably he's there for the long haul to try to get West Brom back. Johnstone's arguably the best keeper in the league. If you all don't make the playoffs at least, I think something went very bad wrong this year. So I've got you finishing 5th and making the playoffs. I'm really rooting for QPR to win the playoffs, but we'll see. We'll get to that as we get on to later on into the year. But that's my predictions for this year. What did I get right? What did I get really, really wrong? Comment below, let me know. Please like and subscribe. I come out with a lot of different content that channels don't do, including leagues from all over the world. I appreciate your view. Thank you guys so much. You all have a great week, and good luck to your clubs that you support.